narcissist whose private feelings of inadequacy must be quenched by the constant adulation of his followers. Hence, the nonstop rallies filled with chants of hatred, threats of violence, and constant references to Trump's serial lies and fantasy world. We all remember his infamous statement, "I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose voters." I repeat that. "I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose voters." How is it possible that 42% of Americans still support the worst president in history? He is the first president since World War II to see a net loss of jobs during his term. He has presided over the loss of more than 200,000 people from COVID-19. That's 4 times the fatalities of the Vietnam War. Having contracted COVID-19 himself, he refuses to take the pandemic seriously. He keeps promising, quote, "it will magically disappear," quote, of its own accord, while holding rallies practically guaranteed to spread the virus. He has abused his power and was impeached for doing so. He traffics in racism and xenophobia. He incites violence. He has kowtowed to dictators and trashed our alliances. He has welcomed Russian attacks on our elections. He has locked children in cages. He is the worst president in history, yet millions support him. What are they thinking? What are they thinking? I've read several articles from psychologists who give some common features to his supporters. I'm gonna read all of them first and then go through each of them in a little detail. So his followers embellish rebelliousness and chaos, shared irrationality, authoritarianism, racism and bigotry, obsession with celebrity, fear-mongering, Trump as a messiah, and the cult of Trump. Under the rebelliousness and chaos, some of his supporters have a strong desire for rebelliousness and chaos and view Trump as the perfect vehicle for achieving their personal goals. They tend to be anti-establishment and anti-government. Many are unhappy with their station in life and believe chaos is in the political system will bring them gains. They would rather have chaos than the status quo. They enjoy and thrive upon Trump disavowing norms, rules, and laws. Shared irrationality, or the Dunning-Kruger effect. Some people are underinformed and misinformed and are completely unaware of their lack of information. They tend to overestimate their level of knowledge and hold on to that position. In other words, some people think they know more than they do, and they hold on firmly to their opinions. Authoritarianism is total and complete obedience to authority. People who, his supporters, espouse aggression towards the outgroups. They have a hierarchical view of the world and the belief that the world is dangerous and threatening. Racism and bigotry. The most important factor in Trump's 2016 victory was racism and bigotry. That was the factor that was most important in his being elected. We've heard the statements that he made about people from shithole countries, that laziness is a trait in Blacks and low IQ. Maxine, and on and on. Obsession with celebrity. The loyalty of some of his supporters may be explained by America's addiction to reality TV. Fear-mongering. Research has shown that the conservative brain has an exaggerated fear response and a larger amygdala. The amygdala is the part of the brain that activates during states of fear. Fear keeps his followers energized. Trump is a messiah. There are actually some evangelicals who see him as their messiah. Magical thinking. This is the belief that one's thoughts, feelings, ideas, or words can bring about effects in the world or cause something to happen. Trump constantly engages in magical thinking. This is especially dangerous during this pandemic when he says it will disappear very quickly. That's an example of magical thinking. The cult of Trump. Authorities and cults state Trump employs many of the same techniques as prominent cult leaders and displays the same personality traits. A cult is a social group defined by its particular religious or philosophical beliefs with devotion to a particular personality. The characteristics of a cult include a leader who has no meaningful accountability and becomes the cult's single source of power. There's a process of indoctrination, and cult members are doing things that are not in their own interests, but in the best interest of the leader. Things like attending a political rally during a spike in the worst and most contagious pandemic we've lived in 100 years, a la the Tulsa rally where Herman Cain went and was exposed and lost his life. So those are the characteristics of Trump supporters. I'm interested in your thoughts and reactions to what I've talked about here.
Well.
Wow. Yeah.
I hate to like start reading because you've read so much and said so much, but this inspired me. Well, first of all, let me mention I watched the president today in the Midwest. He just gave a speech about 2 hours ago.
Okay.
And large crowd, mostly not wearing masks. One of the things that we talk about is narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
He was taken. He was almost captivated by the crowd saying, "We love you, we love you, we love you." And the part about that, he dealt with that for about 5 minutes.
Wow.
Compared himself to Ronald Reagan, which is not going to get him a lot of votes, and saying if Ronald Reagan had come for a rally, he'd have about 200 people, but I've got 40,000, and they're all saying they love me. But the other part of this, and I read Dr. Neil Burton from Psychology Today.
Okay.
And we're talking about his followers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd just like to read a little short portion, but this is about scapegoating, which is what they do. Mm-hmm. The ego defense of displacement plays an important role in scapegoating. And it's uncomfortable feelings such as anger, frustration, envy, guilt, and shame, and insecurity onto another, often more vulnerable person or group. Could be Mexicans, could be blacks. Mm-hmm. The scapegoats, that is outsiders, immigrants, minorities, deviants, are then persecuted, enabling the scapegoaters to discharge and distract from their negative feelings, which are replaced or overtaken by a crude but consoling sense of affirmation and self-righteous indignation. Those are your MAGA people.
Yes.
Accurate description.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I got a very interesting. You know, I want to keep all of us in mind, especially our listeners out there. Regardless of what term we put Trump supporters in, no matter how negative their behavior, thought process, and bigotries and racist attitude, they're still voters.
Mm-hmm.
That's the scary part. And not only are they voters, keep in mind they live among us. In our communities, in our schools, in our police departments, in our local governments, everywhere where we exist, they exist. I think this is probably the most crucial time in American history because now you're getting to see who we really are, each and every last one of us. I think it's important to keep in mind also, long after Trump is gone, they will still be here.
True, true.
Nothing's going to change their attitude.
No,
And even more so,
no.
Trump has just become the most excellent means of allowing them to finally and officially get out, come out the closet per se,
Exactly.
and really do what they always wanted to do.
Exactly.
And they think it's almost a virtue immunity.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's the scary part.
It is very scary. Yes.
You know, you have a stomach ache and you don't know where it's coming from or what's going on, and you take a laxative. America took a laxative when it took Donald Trump into presidential office. and what has happened is the end result is that we look back and we go, did that come out of me? It was always inside of us.
Absolutely.
But now we clearly see it, and not only do we see it,
I don't understand.
it stinks. But this is the nastiness that's been within America and hidden for so long. It's been aching to come out. He's allowed it to come out, and we see it in all of its ugliness.
Yes.
And we see it every single day.
What a great analogy. What a great analogy.
Actually, I think it's good. Listen, for the last 50 years, we have been in this complacency that it's all good. The U.S. has been, we all good. Yeah, we have incidents. We had Rodney King. You know, we had incidents throughout the constantly Warner, the OJ trial. We had Sandy Hook. We've seen more active shooters in our schools, in our churches, in our community. But people have to remember, there's no such thing as, oh, we didn't have these problems in the good old days. Going back to matter, when were the days good? And good for who? We finally at this point in American history where we're going to really see real change because now it affected everybody, not just any particular group, no race, no nationality, no religious, but everybody. People have really got to the point where they had to confront their own selves. Who am I really? What do I stand for? And am I truly that good man who's standing by while evil does what it does? Everybody's challenged at this point in American history. Hell, this is starting to breed over into world history. We all are looking at ourselves and saying, what could we should have done? And really, what are we doing individually? Because keep in mind, we can always look at the broader context of the country and saying, well, they should have done something. But who's they? You know, government is still we the people, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So all of us are challenged now to look at ourselves mentally, emotionally, start to address our fears, start to address our concern, start to address our lack of action, because we got the biggest voter turnout we have had in history in terms of pushing for voting.
Yes.
But isn't it amazing that early voting now has numbers are larger than the whole voting output in 2016?
Yes, I heard that this afternoon.
Yeah, and numbers don't lie now. People are turning out like crazy. So that means everybody now has been touched in a way where it's not like somebody else's problem, but it's those people. Well, that doesn't concern me. Well, my vote doesn't count because nobody cares.
Absolutely.
People are voting with emotion now, not because of responsibility, but with emotion.
Yes, yes. Yes. I mean, people who never voted before. Who was it? Was it Shaq? I think that said he never voted before.
Yes, which is shameful. But anyway.
But man, this is amazing, because think about it. We finally reached that point where we had to confront ourselves. We're not really confronting Donald Trump as a whole. We're confronting ourselves. What have I done to make this a better world?
Yep.
That's heavy.
Right, because there's nothing you can do to change your supporters, right? That's not, it's just something to help people understand what are they thinking, because you have to be wondering, what can you think? I mean, there's someone who says, I can stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and they would still support him?
Right.
That's just,
And think about the supporters who are looking at those who don't support them and say, how could you? Why would you? This is a chance. What's wrong with you people?
yeah.
When I heard Jared Kushner says, and I still can't understand how this incompetent son-in-law is a senior advisor to the president of the United States. My father-in-law is trying to give black people a chance to do better with themselves. If they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, because now at this point, blacks have to do something for themselves if they're going to get a better life. Where has he been since African Americans have been brought to this country and contributed greatly to the building of this country? I'm shocked to hear this from someone of Jewish heritage who, has he forgot the Holocaust and what it took away from the life and the legacy of the Jewish people?
Well, I know his father was very wealthy. His father contributed like over $2 million to Harvard, and that's how he got into Harvard, because his father contributed over $2 million. So he lived that kind of gilded, social, gilded golden spoon life himself.
Well, I want you to keep
his
in mind,
his father is in federal prison right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
For what?
Sorts of like money crimes, embezzlement, and things like that. Yes, he's in federal prison.
Okay.
absolutely.
Christie put him there, and that's why Christie is not in the cabinet, because Jared didn't want him in there.
Oh, okay.
And Christie had kissed enough butt to make it happen. Ain't nobody gonna say Governor Christie has not literally sold his soul to be a part of the Trump train. But I want people to remember, Nazi Germany could not have done what they've done without the assistance of very well-placed members of the Jewish community. Keep in mind, sacrificing some for your own personal gain has always been the motto of collaborators throughout human history. There was no such thing as we being able to do what was done without Jewish collaboration on some level. Think about it. And most people would start to say, wow, there is such a thing as cannibalism after all.
Well, I think if you look at it historically, initially when Hitler came along, there were Jewish people in his cabinet initially, but he got rid of them in short order. Once the roll got to rolling, he got rid of them.
Absolutely.
I have often compared what's going on now to what happened in Germany, and some people get very offended by that. But the process is, we're talking about herd mentality that allows a demagogue to be followed by millions of people, which we have that in Germany, and you have that here. I mean, almost undevotedly. And when you look at the pictures of what was going on in Germany and the type of crowds that he was able to amass to give his speeches, that's another Donald Trump. And the large crowds don't necessarily make what he's doing right. This was an evil person. Donald Trump is another evil person.
Yes.
And I was criticized 4 years ago when I don't know whether you guys saw the movie, but I compared Donald Trump to Damian Thorne in the movie The Omen, because when he made that statement about he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, that's like something right out of the movie. He knows that whatever power he has that nothing can stop him. That's the way he feels. Nothing can stop him. We have it in our power in this country right now to stop him.
Exactly.
But as I heard on the news today, our problem is going to be dealing with the mess that he's created. And
Absolutely.
it's going to take years. It's going to take us years to get over that.
And it's not just the immediate mess. Keep in mind, domestic terrorism is on the rise.
Yes.
We're talking about what used to be sleeper cells that are no longer sleepers. They're actively planning revolts.
Yes.
Who in their right mind would think in the 21st century that there would be an internal group who made the decision, trained, and really was preparing to carry out kidnapping and executing a sitting governor?
Yes.
What makes you think in these United States you can actually execute that kind of plan with immunity?
Exactly.
Yeah, these are Trump supporters.
Keep in mind, Trump supporters. But not only were they Trump supporters, all of those were military trained. Most of them came out of the Marine Corps. And think about it. If we have them in our military, we certainly have them in our police departments.
Yes. Yes.
If we have them in our police departments, we have them in our state, local, and federal governments.
Yes.
Which means they are in position of power, which means they have training, not only in the use of weapons and tactics, and most importantly, what we should be afraid of, they have access to the most sensitive data of our national security of this country. Exactly. That's the thing that should keep us up at night.
Right.
Not so much a Trump and his antics, but those who follow him, who've made the decision that they're going to carry out, how should I say? I can't even say operations. What they're doing is straight anarchy. This is treason on the highest level.
And when
That's
you
what
talk
we talked about last time is the Trump effect, his bullying effect spilling over into schools and society in general. So the Trump effect.
And when you talk about police, because Paul just mentioned that, remember, was it just this week that a New York police officer was suspended for driving through the city and on his loudspeaker yelling Trump 2020.
Yes, yes.
That is scary. That's really scary.
And we just had a local agency here in the Metro Atlanta area. Officers who were assigned to security detail at a polling station wearing a Trump mask. Like, come on. There's certain things, I can care less who you support. You don't defy the uniform by weighing these examples of your personal, religious, or political or otherwise preference, because now you're intimidating.
So what happened to him? Were there actions taken against him?
Well, right now it's under investigation.
Okay.
And this is why I get a little lurky all my years in the agency. It don't take long to investigate something that's blatant. Let me tell you, I hate the term under investigation.
Right.
Because all that says to me, damage control for privileged few.
Wow. Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that you touched on something earlier about and we're going back to herd mentality again. And we have a lot of mental midgets out there. I hate to use that term, but that's who they are. When you have people who are organizing to kidnap and murder and execute, because that's what it was going to be, an execution of a governor, put her on trial in their little whatever kind of court that was going to be. And the president of the United States does nothing to condemn that act, but he continues to malign the governor.
Yes.
So what that says is to the other people who are out there, and there are other people out there, is that I got your back. And that's dangerous. And I think another thing that we're not considering is that win or lose this election, Donald Trump will be the president of the United States at least until January 20th.
Yes.
And after November 3rd, you're going to see this guy really, really show who he is, if you haven't seen it yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're going to see his followers, those who believe and act like him. Don't
Yes.
be surprised if we start to see armed revolts on a level where it went from passive aggression to very much
I
physical altercations.
posted that on Facebook this morning,
Mm.
and I posted it actually a couple of months ago about that. That they're not going away quietly,
Absolutely.
and he's not going away quietly.
Yeah, I think you were
Absolutely
talking
not.
about that the stores there's a shortage of ammunition and guns, that people are buying up all the ammunition and guns.
Yes, that's part of it.
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself,
Mm-hmm.
what are we arming ourselves for?
Mm-hmm.
Because last time I checked, I don't care what weapon you have or what caliber you firing it out of, it ain't to stop covert.
Right.
Right.
This has nothing to do with covert.
Mm-hmm.
We take a pandemic as a reason now to militarize ourselves. That's basically what's happening right now. We're militarizing ourselves, even in the civilian sector, for the purpose of what? I am a very much stark supporter of the Second Amendment. So when I get scared because I walk into my local gun store and I can't even find as much as a box of ammo or any caliber, when the stores are bare, you know, every gun store that I patronize look like grocery stores in hurricane ravaged areas. There's nothing on the shelves. You ask yourself, who's buying all these guns and why?
Yeah.
People are preparing, and you're not telling me it's for self-defense. And there's no way you're going to sit there and tell, well, I got to protect my house from who, from what? And people don't understand the difference between being offensive and defensive. What side are you on?
Well, when we talk about the Second Amendment, and that really plays into a lot that's going on now, that has been it's been historically misconstrued. And most of the people who, the first thing they say, and Donald Trump must have said that 3 times today, they're going to take away your Second Amendment. Well, I think it needs to be taken away, and it needs to be revised, because there's no reason for any citizen to be carrying an AR-15 or an AK-47. Absolutely none. Or an Uzi or any of these type of weapons. They are not for self-defense. Those are assault weapons. Who are you assaulting? The Second Amendment was put in place during the birth of this country, because the country could not afford to arm its soldiers. So they wanted people to have weapons, so that when they called for the militia to come out and take action, they would have weapons. That was the reason for the Second Amendment. We have armies today. We have police departments today. There's no reason for the citizens to have these type of weapons. A weapon to protect you and your home and your family? Absolutely. A weapon to go hunting with? Absolutely. An AR-15, an AK-47, if you try to justify to me that this is what you think that people should carry, I really want you to have your head examined before you do that, before you talk to me, because obviously there's something lacking in your brain when you can justify people walking around the streets with AR-15s. It's crazy. And when you have the Supreme Court just this week said that they prohibited states from telling people that they can't carry weapons into the voting place. And remember, the president just last month said he wanted his people in the polls watching. You want people in the polls watching with AR-15s and watching how you vote? This is what Donald Trump and his supporters want.
I heard that they're going to be stepping up the presence of law enforcement at the polling sites on election day for that very reason.
Yeah, it's needed.
Take that as a positive.
Oh, yes.
Go back to who supports what. If we already had cases of law enforcement loudly on duty using issued equipment to broadcast support for Donald Trump, we have situations of officers on duty in these polling stations wearing paraphernalia supporting Donald Trump.
Mhm.
You need to be careful who you allow to protect the hen house. And we have reached a point now where it's like, wow, we don't know who to trust. They have polling stations set up in Republican businesses where they're collecting the ballots. And California said that's illegal. And it's like, they've already served notice. When the attorney general and the election officials of a state tell you that won't be allowed, that's illegal, and you still keep doing it with immunity, and there's no enforcement. And see, here's the problem I have right now. If you say legally cease and desist, and this is a legal matter, why have they not now utilized law enforcement to turn around and enforce this? And that's the problem I have. Because if it's illegal polling in your state has already said this is illegal and we won't allow it, why have you not responded to situations of illegal polling and illegal collection of ballots and shut it down?
So would the attorney general be the one to do that, or who would be the one to enforce?
Absolutely. The election officials get with the state attorney general, and now you enforce this law. See, as long as you keep passively telling them don't do it, they're going to keep doing it. They're trying you now. At some point, you have to put some teeth into your message and bite some butts. and as long as you keep passively asking for cooperation, you're not going to receive it. So eventually, you're going to have to make an example. In other words, enforce your own directives.
In addition to the plot against the governor, they did arrest a man who had planned to kidnap and kill Kamala Harris and Biden. A guy had planned that. Yes. They arrested him as well.
And trust me, he wasn't planning that by himself. So one individual, it's like a terrorist link. And what we failed to learn from terrorist networks with this war on terrorism for the last 30 years, killing the head, cutting off the head has absolutely nothing to do with taking out the mentality or the philosophy of a terrorist organization. That's what we have now in domestic terrorism. Look how long bin Laden has been dead, and yet the philosophy of jihad is even stronger now than it's ever been. This wonderful president made the mistake of saying ISIS is dead a little over a year ago. That the war is over. We've accomplished our goal. ISIS is alive and well. They're recovering. They're re-strategizing. They have sleeper cells in the United States that now are waiting for the next opportunity to conduct their 9/11.
Yeah, that's his magical thinking again. His magical thinking.
And the crazy thing about it, we have given an opportunity to come back even better and improve, because this nonsense response to COVID and now this internal nonsense we're going through with this election has literally taken away all the heat and ability from our counterterrorist units to focus on international terrorists, because now we got to focus all our resources on domestic terrorism.
But his own experts advised him about domestic terrorism, and he ignored it.
Because the domestic terrorist is a support group.
Exactly, right. Yes. That's part of his base. Part of his base.
So why would I shut down those who are going to ensure that I stay in power? And believe it or not, he's already assuring them damn near immunity for all their actions. You got immunity. How many do you plan to pardon after they kidnap and kill any of your political opponents? How many are you going to turn around and say, hey, you're going to curtail the Department of Justice to really investigate? How are you going to keep the FBI from doing their job by telling them, listen, if you don't do what I tell you, then I'll just get another director who will? We have the scariest time in American history, because our Department of Justice and our FBI, the two main law enforcement agencies for our internal problems in this country, have now been pretty much neutered. And don't expect Barr to any way, shape, or form be sympathetic to anybody who doesn't support Donald Trump's agenda.
there's a question. So can a Trump supporter still support him and not have mental issues too?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Here are something that a couple of things that and from Psychology Today, I'd just like to mention. One of them is some experts even stated that peaceful crowds are usually transformed into violent mobs because of actions of one or two persons. It could be done by an individual or a ringleader. And also that these people, sometimes if you get them away from the crowd or away from that leader, because what he wants is the crowd. He wants that crowd mentality. When you get them away from that and you talk to them, they sound like rational people. But while they are consumed by this herd mentality, and that's what it is, they're dangerous people. And normally sane, rational people become irrational. And it's that irrationality that Trump prized himself on. A great example was today. We just saw pictures of his son, Barron, just a few weeks ago. And he's, was he 14? Looks like a 14-year-old. Today, he was on television saying that his 14-year-old son is 6'5" tall, which isn't true. but that mob cheered it. They were applauding it. But he lives in another reality.
Yes.
And as does his a lot of his supporters. And you remember Kellyanne Conway, at the very beginning of his administration, used the phrase alternative facts.
Yes.
It's amazing, but this is the world that they live in, and they promote that. And if you've read 1984, this is or as Orwellian as it gets, and we're seeing it right now. It's happening. It's happening. So yes, everybody does not have mental issues that's following Donald Trump. They're just caught up in the wave. Yeah, they're caught up in it.
And so, like I said, the cult thinking. I mean, that doesn't mean it's a cult.
Well, see, again, this is what is starting to upset me when we keep using the term mental health of Donald Trump supporters, because now, again, we're placing another stigma of those who are.
Notice I said psychological. I didn't say mental health. I said psychological factors. Behind the supporters, the psychological factors.
Got you. Because I really don't want to see our mental health community now
stigmatized further.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, let's face it. Donald Trump supporters are not crazy people. They're very, very rational in their actions. Like Norm said, that herd mentality and immunity now, because I have immunity to do this because there's more of me out there doing it, and I got a president in a position who's not only tolerating it, but encouraging it.
Exactly.
People got to understand that bully type mentality is really rooted into how many of those support me and do nothing when I do my bullying. Nobody's standing up to me. Actually, they're encouraging me because now they're going to support me, because as long as I'm bullying somebody else, then you ain't going to come and bother me.
Right.
This is crazy. I've never thought I'd see something like this in my lifetime. And I'm sure neither of you ever saw this coming.
No, I'm complete shock after, an administration of the Obamas and then this. I mean, oh, wow.
Well, I have said this months ago that, and I think it might have been on your program, that perhaps one of the worst things that ever happened to this country was the election of President Obama, because, and I'm not saying that it was a bad thing, but what has happened is what we're seeing with the Donald Trump supporters is a complete reaction to having the first African-American president, where his first acts and his continuing acts are to try to undo everything that has the Obama administration's name on it.
Exactly.
And if that's not racism in all of its infamous glory, then I don't know what is.
It is.
And his supporters are driven by that, to the point of it's not even good for them, because when you talk about getting rid of the Affordable Care Act and you have no replacement for it,
None.
that's just absolutely, that's insane. But this is what herd mentality does. It makes people irrational, absolutely irrational. And Donald Trump has been an expert at that. This is how he got his presidency.
Exactly.
Remember, he got all of his attention by challenging the authenticity of
Birth certificate.
of Obama as an American citizen. Yeah.
No agenda.
Uh,
And it's
yeah.
funny how his supporters fail to acknowledge or even respond to the fact that he has absolutely no agenda whatsoever.
And no health plan. No health
Yeah.
plan.
You can't, but again, I'm going back to the herd mentality and the irrationality of it all. That's not in there. That's not even in their thought process. That doesn't even register with them.
Well, I'm sorry, Norm.
No, go ahead.
I just want to throw this out real quick. We have 3 state candidates for senatorial and Congress positions that should never be anywhere because they're just as worse as Donald Trump. And I'm going to tell you, Karen Handel and Kelly Loeffler, it's amazing you have 2 females who are even more venomous than Donald Trump himself. Their whole pride of power is they would do what Trump says unconditionally.
Yes.
And it's amazing how most of his agenda really is demeaning and very dangerous to women, especially when it comes to the Abortion Rights Act and other effects. It's just amazing me you have 2 women who would not hesitate to hurt other women with the decisions that they can make as they put in these positions. I look at David Perdue, again, long-term state senator, Republican. His moral fiber is probably lower than Trump's. He has profited handsomely off this COVID-19 pandemic, but yet at the same time, he has voted consistently to take away protection and coverages for people with pre-existing conditions. It's like, wow, listen, these hurt the very constituents who may be part of the Trump base themselves.
Exactly.
We look at, just thinking about, thanks for the reminder, Vernon Jones, who has turned himself from a Georgia political celebrity into the Republican class clown.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I guess you've seen the picture of him body surfing in the crowd.
As a Republican is what I call them. A Republican.
But you got to keep in mind, people, you also got celebrities now, even our own rappers. It's a big problem. People upset that 50 Cent and a lot of other celebrities now.
Ice Cube.
Well, Ice Cube, I don't think he's so much a Trump supporter, but he's looking at an opportunity to be able to get some of his agenda achieved through Trump.
It came out today. I saw something where he was offered money from the Trump campaign, that he was offered some money.
And the funny thing is, Cube is financially set regardless. So I can't see money being his motivation. But I believe he took the path of least resistance, because if the Democrats don't openly support his ability, what do you call it, the platinum plan? Well, if he feels he can get it through the Republicans, then right now his rationality is by any means necessary. Let's be honest. And it's 50-50 where the election would go. It doesn't maybe be a Republican government in January or Democrat, but the bottom line is he's gambling on somebody somewhere in a position of power can help me get this agenda done. I'm not mad at him for that, because he's playing both sides. But at the end of the day, when you do have our Vernon Jones and other very high profile celebrities who openly support Donald Trump, hell, keep in mind, in Atlanta last week, we had a major rally by the Black Republicans of the state of Georgia. They do exist.
Last week there was a rally. That's another
they do exist.
interesting issue how a black person can support Trump. Now that's really
I have no problems with an African American Republican. I have absolutely no problem with that. My problem is the people who follow Trump.
yes.
And unfortunately, what has happened is there is no longer a functioning Republican Party because it's now the Trump Party.
Exactly.
And that is sad for our country. One other celebrity that you left out was Kanye West.
I don't even consider him a factor.
But he is. But no, he's
Wow.
he's not a factor here. But he is on the ballot in several states in this country,
True
and
that.
he will pull votes.
And that
He
was the
will
whole
pull
purpose.
votes.
That's the whole
Yes,
purpose.
and talking about being paid,
Mhm.
yes,
Mhm.
paid, yes.
You know, Kanye West, I've never been a fan of his. Let's just go ahead and get that out there now.
Mhm.
It's one thing to be an attention seeker. It's another thing to be an entertainer, because I've always heard any publicity is good publicity, even if it's negative.
Mhm.
But he has no idea the damage he's doing to the infrastructure of
Mhm.
Black America.
Mhm.
And the sad part about it, people quickly want to say in his support group now, his support, well, he had mental health issues. It's not a mental health issue. This fool truly believes that he is some reincarnation of some God that has a light. Him and
But that is
Donald
part of his
Trump.
mental health. He's bipolar. And when you're bipolar, you have grandiose delusions. So that is part of his mental illness, the grandiose delusions.
Yes.
Well, you
He's
know
off
what?
his meds, off his meds.
Grandiosis. I would love to see what the psychiatric profile for Jim Jones was, because I see Kanye West as another Jim Jones.
Okay, well,
And people got
cult leader.
exactly. And then you got to keep in mind, just 3 weeks ago, we had a major production here in Atlanta with Jim Jones and Joel Osteen. They're very, very close. I
Jones.
often wonder
Jim
what.
Jones is dead.
Yeah.
No, not Jim Jones. Joel Osteen.
Oh,
Oh.
Joel Osteen and okay, you say.
You gotta ask yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that alliance is more than just, hey, we share the same religious philosophy. These two are openly collaborating on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm.
I've always considered Joel Osteen, and maybe it was my being naive to who he is as a pastor or his religious, as one of those, hey, want to spread the good word, the good people to have a good life. Joe, how do you benefit from this relationship with Kanye West, knowing how I feel and the rhetoric he's put out? More so, are you just as loyal to Donald Trump? Are you out of Kanye? Because now you got to ask yourself, listen, have we lost the religious sector too? Have they sold their souls now to be a part of this?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
you got to remember Joel Osteen, if I might interject, because we kind of forget
Mm-hmm.
that back when that hurricane
Yes.
hit Houston a few years ago, Joel Osteen shut his doors on people who were trying to come in
Right.
seeking refuge.
Right.
And it was only after that it hit the press
Mm-hmm.
that he opened those doors. But he refused to let those people into his church to find sanctuary during a hurricane. There's a biblical saying that about you can judge people by the fruit that they bear.
Exactly.
And I talk about this a little bit yesterday. You really have to watch people who are in grand positions or positions of authority. Some of these mega preachers right here in Atlanta, folks, you forgot what happened with one of your mega preachers just not too long ago.
And let's call out the names.
And we quickly forget these things.
Yes.
Where we had several young boys who were abused by this mega preacher, and there was a settlement.
And I'm going to put the name
Supposedly
out.
kept quiet.
I'm going to put the name out because
you talk about Eddie Long.
and see, here's where I get really upset with this process. Eddie Long, from my understanding, there's been rumors of this behavior for decades. People in his inner circle knew. He had those who cover it up for him. He had major religious leaders political leaders, law enforcement leaders who were a part, celebrities. The bigger the name at one point, New Birth, when I first came to Atlanta, Georgia in 1994, you say something bad about Eddie Long, and here you were liable to be physically hurt. People will literally drop. I worked with so many officers who were part of the security detail or attended New Birth that you had to watch what you say around this guy. And I'm serious. They literally came after you physically to the point where it was a confrontation. And I know because I've seen a few of them take place. I'm going to tell you this. My biggest problem, and I'm upset with Atlanta and the mentality of those who consider themselves to be part of their political and social elite here for their stupidity. Because once again in New Birth, we have a Jamal Bryant. And let's put it out there. These are my opinions and not necessary. But I see another predator on the Black community because you know his background, you know his moral turpitude, you know his lack of moral fiber. But again, you put him in a position to be worshiped, like he's somebody to lead you. Like again, to me, this is another predator on why Black America will not succeed in this country, because we put our faith and support behind those who rich themselves at our expense, but at the same time, don't do anything to take care of our communities. And I can care less how many soup kitchens he does and how he should.
But did you see at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, he was going to be testing people for like $250 a person. But then people got so much bad publicity that he shut it down, but he was going to charge people $250 a person to be tested.
He is a predator on the Black community. I don't care what anybody says. In New Birth, it's swelling because we have a celebrity preacher. We have this, we have that. You know, I don't care anything about a Jamal Bryant. I can care less about a T.G. Jakes. I can care less about all these mega preachers because I grew up in an era where if you was Black in America when I was young, listen, let me tell you, anybody who doesn't know, come on, y'all know the preacher I'm talking about. His statement was, you can't lose with the stuff I use.
Yeah,
Reverend Ike. Reverend Ike. Reverend Ike. Before Reverend Ike, there was Father Divine. And let's start, because there's been so many of these predators on our community have taken advantage of us. Black people has taken religion like we invited it. And we invented it to the point where we are fanatical about these celebrity criminals we put in position to sit there and do the thing. Or he's a great speaker. You want to know why? Because he got your attention. He turned your sermon into showtime. We all got to now have these big time music directors and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what are you getting out of it morally? What are you doing to make your community better? What are you doing to look at this world now and beyond where you live at, what church you're from? We have a Trump now who's prolificating around this country and this world because the fools of us who sat there and want to sit there and how should I say, idolize false prophets have really become a victims of our own stupidity and ignorance.
And it's still like cult
thinking. In the wrong people.
That's cult thinking as well. That's cult thinking.
Well, since we're talking about preachers, I'd like to bring up one, and I'm gonna call him out. There was back in the early 60s or mid 60s, the Reverend Martin Luther King was encouraged to get into politics and even run for president. And he refused to get into politics because that would damage his credibility.
Absolutely.
And I often wonder about church leaders becoming involved in politics. I'm sorry, I have to question that, because when you get into politics, who are you selling your soul to? It takes millions of dollars to run a campaign. Where does the money come from? Who are you beholden to? Are you beholden now solely to your God, or are you beholden to other people?
Wow. Now that, my friend, is the $1 million question.
I'm just saying. And I look at Reverend King, and I think about that, and I remember when he made that decision and he explained it, and to this very day, except for what's his name, the head of SCLC, he did run for president at one point. Jesse Jackson.
Oh, you
Yeah.
mean what is it? The
Yeah.
what was his name of his I know it's
Rainbow Coalition.
Rainbow Coalition.
Yeah.
Yes. But we're getting away from the Donald Trump supporters.
We certainly are, because let me tell you right now, Jesse was a perfect predator. You know, Jesse held major corporations hostage by simply, if they had an uprising or they have African American workers were unsatisfied and wanted to strike, what did they do? They called Jesse in. Not the workers calling Jesse in, but the corporation, the system. Hey, Jesse, what was Jesse getting for convincing these brothers and sisters to go back to work? Come on, we're going to get some turn. They pacified them with a few changes, but at the end of the day, it made Jesse look like he was some major mitigator and he had the power to come in and change things. Well, we all know in his own nonprofit, Jesse was skimming money like it's nothing. So if you were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to your mistress on the side you had a love child with, then please tell us where all this money was coming from, because your supporters can only give so much.
Let me tell you, I have two stories about Jesse. I was at some function, I can't remember what it was, in DC, and he was speaking. Then he instructed them to lock the doors, not let anybody out until he raised a certain amount of money, so no one could leave. He actually locked the doors and banned people from leaving until he raised whatever amount that he wanted to raise. Then another situation, my father was a pastor in Milwaukee, and Jesse spoke at my father's church. He was there to speak for a political thing. Then he started trying to raise a collection, and my father said no, and Jesse got angry and said he would never come back to my father's church again because he wanted to raise a collection in my father's church.
Wow.
You got to and also remember that Jesse Jackson was really held in a very bad light for quite a while after the slaying of Martin Luther King, because Jesse Jackson chose to walk around for about 2 or 3 days with the shirt with the blood of Dr. Martin Luther King on him, and people said that leaders were saying that he was doing this for show.
Absolutely.
And that's really a sad commentary on someone's character, to have to do something like that.
Because that was Jesse's way of saying, now is my time. I can work this.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
Yeah, that's his hustle.
Yeah.
So we talk about Trump supporters. Look at the mentality of Black America and say to yourself, why have we invested so much in some of the most immoral people to call our leaders? If they have not stood up and really represented us the way that we felt we should have been, then why would we expect the system to respect us? We have got to understand, if you're truly going to be a part of this country in such a way where you're first-class citizens, then you too got to consider yourself to be part of we the people. You have an obligation in our community to do better, to invest in our community. We can't keep saying that, oh, the police come in here and we dealing with police brutality, but at the same time, we have yet to take responsibility for policing ourselves. Every child born has a mother and a father, whether they're together or not. They have an obligation in our communities. It used to be, it takes a village to raise a child. None of us were perfect parents. I'm still looking at myself and asking myself what I should have done better. What was I taught to be a better parent? What mistakes I made that I should not pass on? How can I be better as a grandfather where I wasn't as a father? And that kind of thinking every day makes me realize this has never been about me from day one. It's about what I'm passing on. That it's more than the generational wealth to tell my children, well, I got this, so you'll have something. But what about the falling down aspect of life and showing them the strength of getting back up? What about telling them, hey, listen, you're going to make more mistakes and good decisions, but most importantly, you're going to walk away knowing that I was able to learn and pass that on.
Exactly. Values and things, values. Yeah.
Yeah, the value system has to be in such a way. It's not even about who you support politically, religiously, or whatever. It's about who you are as a person and what you stand for now. I will not stand by and let evil proliferate in my immediate vicinity without doing something to better this situation. And to me, that's the real responsibility of saying, now I care about my community. I care about the people around me, whether you're related to me or not. And most importantly, embrace diversity to the point where we start to realize it takes us all to make a better world.
Amen.
There's no such thing as I. You can forget the I. Just take us all. Let's go ahead and invest into being better citizens, and we might just see a change in our life in this world, not just in our country.
The man in the mirror.
Yes.
Hey, every day.
These are the top results.
Every day. I mean, I love this country, but you know, my national heritage is Trinidad, and I love the fact that I got a little bit in here, a little bit there. I mean, each day I wake up saying, hey, you know what? I support the American Constitution to every fiber in my body. But at the same time, hey, there's a Trinidadian streak that, hey, listen, you know what I mean? I got a little flavor inside of here. But that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. You know what I mean, Doc? Am I crazy, Doc? Talk to me.
No, not at all. You're all perfectly sane. Yes.
Get off the couch.
Yes, sir.
You know, one of the things I talked about on my program yesterday, Issues and Answers, was, and you slightly mentioned it, Paul, was being careful who we follow.
Yes, sir.
And I look at, I'm going to call out her name, Candace Owens.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
One of the things that I said yesterday on my program is that a Judas goat always looks like the flock. And you really have to be careful and just think about it on a small scale. We're not even going to go big scale, but there was a super spreader event on the White House lawn just a few weeks ago. And now you, supposedly a friend of the African Americans, you organized a group of 200 and some odd people, paid people, they were paid lodging and transportation to gather almost in the same place in the middle of a pandemic, and you skin and grin about it.
Absolutely.
The Judas goat always leads the lambs to slaughter. It's not a good thing. And Candace Owens has shown herself to be a devotee of Donald Trump. And I have nothing against Republicans. I actually know some really, really good people who happen to be Republicans. It's a political philosophy. No problem with that. My problem with it is when your philosophy is not Republican but Donald Trump, you present a danger to me and mine. And that's when I'm against. So when you tell me that you are a Donald Trump supporter, and I know we have some listening right now, you're telling me that you are a danger to me and my family, that you support a danger to me and my family. 220,000 people are dead right now that should not be dead. The Trump administration refuses to acknowledge that that these people are dead and that we have something like 10 million people, or is it 20 million
infected.
that are infected by COVID-19, and yet he still has followers at these rallies who come unmasked and uncaring that they are taking that disease back to their families. It could be their children, could be their grandparents. This is what we talk about when we talk about herd mentality. It's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous.
The narcissism, he only cares about himself, and he really doesn't care about his followers, other than he craves and thrives, I said, on that adulation because of his sense of inadequacy. I was thinking about what happened last night. All those people that were left out in the cold, the elderly,
Yes.
young children, people had to be transported by ambulance. He got in his,
Yes.
plane and left, and all these thousands of people were left out there in the cold. He didn't. And then the response today, I mean, he didn't really, say anything about them. It was just about, oh, we provided hot chocolate and cookies, is what they said.
Yeah. What a cop out.
Yeah. But keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, we have over 560 children who have been displaced for their parents that we cannot locate their parents.
Yes.
So this president has shown a reckless disregard for human life, whether they're his own supporters or not. 560 children. How did you ever think separating children from their parents was a good idea? And I want you to keep this in mind, WCEG family and the Republican listeners out there. Trump didn't physically do it himself.
Yep.
He may have given the order, but you look at those who carried it out. Is this not reminiscent of what took place in the Holocaust?
Say it.
I mean, let's put it the way it is.
Say it loud.
Yes, sir. When they went to Dachau and other concentration camps throughout Europe, separating the children from the parents was the first priority. Then you quickly eliminated those. And when I say eliminated, to the gas chamber, firing squads, or whatever you mean, of those who were too weak, too feeble, too young to work. Then you took the able-bodied and you put them toward making your war machine work. And at the end of the day, we find ourselves right now in the 21st century United States of America with over 500 children that we can't find parents for.
Right. And these children are going to suffer severe psychological consequences for the rest of their lives.
Yes, they will.
And but rest of their lives.
What we going to do with them? Because if they have a long life, where are we going to place them? Who are we going to place them with? And more importantly, how are we going to compensate them for their education, their upbringing, their housing?
We, as a country, are going to pay for those 500 children.
Yes, we will.
Until their adulthood.
Yes,
we as a country, and we will likely wind up paying not only for their support, but we're going to wind up paying for their education.
Absolutely.
Because what has happened to them is just about, you can really look at that as what happened to the slaves who came over here years ago. They have no support. They have no basis. They actually have no culture. They have no culture on a small scale. And on a small scale, this is what happened to slaves. You took away their culture. You took away their language. And then you said, okay, where slaves are free, okay, go ahead and make it. But, oh, by the way, you can't go to this school. Can't go to that school. You can't live here. You can't work here. But we want you to make it because this is America. This is what you have created with these little 500, I think it's 560 children. We're going to be stuck with them for a while, and it's going to be a problem that we're going to have to deal with for generations.
Absolutely. It's no way in God's given hell, earth on this children have been separated from their parents, especially if there was a chain of custody that should have been done. We should have known who belonged to who, who's where. Those who executed this whole immigration policy not only should lose their jobs, but they should be criminally charged because you were so negligent in duty that this makes no sense.
But he's a malignant.
It makes absolutely no sense.
He's a malignant narcissist. He has no empathy or concern for anybody else.
Yeah, but this is not Trump anymore.
Well, I mean, but his
orders
along with it. I'm saying that's where it stemmed from. He was advised by others, but he put that policy in place. But I'm saying he has no empathy for anyone else.
This is what Hitler did. Remember, we talked about this herd mentality. This is what Hitler did. Had people doing things that they normally would not have done on their own, and it's scary, and it's sad, and we're going to be paying for this for generations.
And the children, like I said, they're going to have profound psychological damage, and we're going to have to deal with the mental health aspects of that whole situation.
And see, this is where I realized that it doesn't matter who your party affiliation or support lies in. Evil knows no organization or loyalty. This is evil combined with ignorance and carelessness. With the very people separated these children from their parents in the name of immigration enforcement, would they have allowed their own children, their own families been destroyed and separated like that? Would they allow this to happen to those who care about, those in their communities?
That they did with blacks, they dehumanized them. It's like easy to do when you dehumanize another being, and that's what they did to dehumanize.
And exactly,
that's part of the process.
Right.
That's part of the process. And that's my point. They actually went out and dehumanized these people to the point where nobody cared about.
Exactly.
I stopped caring. I'm following this war on terrorism. You want to know why? Because to this day, I still find it hard to understand or locate any friends or people I know personally named insurgent. You know, you tell me, well, we killed 500 insurgents today. Well, insurgents might as well be roaches as far as I'm concerned. You effectively demonize a whole race of religion, of quality, a culture that's, well, they're the enemy. Well, if they're the enemy, then when we start talking about how many gang members we took off the street, well, let's go internally now. Each one of these gang members got a name. They're part of somebody's family. They're part of something. Again, we had dehumanized to the point where if you don't treat them like human, then why are you even remotely surprised and upset when they act inhuman?
Exactly.
Can I jump in here for a minute? Because
sure, absolutely.
You really touched on a point, and I know it may not be related to the Trump people, but dehumanization. I really want to talk what to deal with that, because people don't understand what that really means. When you're in the military and you're in combat, you come up with terms to dehumanize your enemy because it makes them easier to kill. Going back to slavery times, it was easy to lynch people and to kill people and to rape them because they were only ends, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Sadly, and I talk about this often, nobody kills us like us. And one of the reasons is we still hold on to that dehumanizing name that we call each other. We say it's a term of endearment. It is not. What it is it gives you the vision of looking at your kinsman as something less than human. And when you do that, you are able to kill them, to rape them, to do all sorts of inhumane things to them because you did it to an end. You didn't do it to a human being. And until we stop dehumanizing one another, the whole thing about black on black crime, which is a reality, I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but it will continue and it will grow. You can't sing about it. You can't do other things about it. You can't make it part of your poetry, because what you do is you are establishing a continuum where this dehumanizing behavior continues. We talk about Donald Trump and how him and his people dehumanize everybody who doesn't look like them or think like them. And if you don't think like them, you're a radical left.
Absolutely.
That's insanity, but it's in keeping with what we're talking about with this herd mentality and this scapegoating that goes on with people who are involved in this type of behavior. Okay, I'm done.
No, you're right, Norm, because their whole theology of fear, the philosophy is based upon don't let the liberals win.
Right.
Every ad I've seen for a Republican running for office in the state of Georgia is a warning about allowing the liberals. You want the liberals leading you?
Right.
Where have we gotten with warmongers?
Yeah.
Let's try a little tenderness. You know, when people marching and say no peace, no justice, no justice, no peace, come on, no peace, no justice, no justice, no peace. somewhere along the lines, everybody have to stop and ask themselves, what does that mean? Even the ones who saying it. Are you just chanting to be chanting, or do you really understand what that means?
No, they don't.
And that's the sad part again. They don't. Again, herd mentality on both sides. It's the popular thing to do. I get out of it. It make you feel like you part of something bigger than yourself.
I have a guy that's a Facebook friend, and he likes to talk about liberals in a disparaging way. And I always say to him, if it wasn't for liberals, we'd still be in slavery. If it wasn't for liberals, women would not have the right to vote.
Absolutely.
If it wasn't for liberals, we would not have had the Voting Rights Act of 1964 and other civil rights legislation. And I could go on and on and on about
Medicare.
Yes, Social Security and Medicare, liberals. So really, if you're against liberals, I want you to give back all that money you're getting from Social Security.
Absolutely.
I want you to cut up your Medicare card. Throw that away too, because all of those things came from liberals.
Liberals. And it's amazing when I sit there and think the whole attack mode agenda of most of our Republican candidates in this state that I actually have an opportunity to vote on are warning me against the liberal agenda. I'm saying to myself, wow, all you want me to do is keep you in position of power to keep enriching yourself.
Exactly.
You're not doing anything for me or the community. You can care less. You're warning me against those who want to help me get a better life. You kidding me? Listen, I haven't seen any liberals planning on kidnapping any political or government officials.
Exactly.
I have not. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody. But show me where liberals have become an armed threat to me and mine in this country.
Yeah, good example. Good example.
Very fine people on both sides.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We need to write that on the tombstone of that young lady that got killed in Charlottesville.
Oh,
absolutely.
I mean,
that's a beautiful soul who really wanted to make a difference in this world.
That's what this mentality, that Donald Trump has established. That's where he gets us. When you have people walking up and down the street with torches, saying disparaging things about Jews, that's not America. That's Nazi Germany.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that's what these people want. I actually have an article, I think I talked about this before, where this gentleman who was a Holocaust survivor talked about how the Nazis who repatriated themselves into the United States became very comfortable being part of the Republican Party because it suited their needs. And what we're seeing is this coming out on steroids now that Trump is in the House. It's very sad, very, 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 very sad.
I want our listeners to understand, especially when you see these ex-Nazis who became a part of American fabrics. We are dealing with a wave of domestic terrorism now that even exceeds what we've seen with the international terrorists. These are terms and names and organizations. When you hear Boogaloo Boys, when you hear neo-Nazis, when you hear the skinheads, when you hear militias, keep in mind, these are armed organizations that have already started spreading chaos within this whole system we have to undermine, to lead to anarchy. We're discovering more and more of these individuals were part of the Black Lives movements when they were actually most of the violence and destruction and shooting took place. They orchestrated a lot of this. They took advantage of what the chaos of a movement.
Right, like they set the Wendy's on fire here in Atlanta.
And this is getting more prevalent. And we have yet to really fully investigate, to start weed out and prosecuting these individuals. But we know even in Seattle, even in Michigan, with a shooting where Mr. Blake, you got to keep in mind, These individuals have seized the opportunity to now make the movement look like it's a radical, violent protest when it's not.
Yeah.
I had worked every protest in here in Metro Atlanta that took place physically. I am there behind the line, been tear gassed, been a part of the documentation of law enforcement of our response to this. And I'm proud to say, as I look back at my notes and the pictures and the documentary I'm putting together, it's like, wow, you know, how many of those, millions of people of beautiful faces, diverse faces who were peaceful, but yet now can I look at my own films and video and start picking out those who were radical instigators? And what the agenda was not about peaceful change, was about anarchy in the name of a group that tried to incite something.
Yeah, I think your mayor came out and said that, and also Dr. King's daughter actually said that right in the midst of the first few days of those riots here in Atlanta. And we have to be, as they said, you have to be very careful about some of these strange faces that popped up that were never here in Atlanta before.
And this is, and I'm sorry, Norm.
No, go ahead.
This is where the so-called mayor of Atlanta failed the people of Atlanta. And you know how I feel about the whole administration?
Yeah, we know how you feel.
Because first of all, it should have been a more proactive law enforcement response, not with force, but better intelligence. You aligned yourself like you were a co-collaborator with this whole demonstration. I understand allowing peaceful protests. I understand accommodating. I'm understanding not trying to inflame, pour gas on the fire, but you still are a law enforcement agency. And as the mayor, you have a responsibility to ensure the safety of all. More importantly, you should have taken steps to prevent radical, violent actions. And why I say that? The University in Pryor, the situation at Wendy's, where a beautiful little 8-year-old girl was killed. We had numerous situations of shooting and other acts of criminal activity that we should have quelled and put down immediately. There was absolutely no law enforcement present by the order of the mayor. You had a police chief who resigned immediately because it showed the leadership of this agency for decades, but now at the most pivotal point in the history of this city, right now, your leadership structure was so incompetent that finally got challenged in such a way that you had no response. There's no excuse for enforcing the law, especially during times of critical need when discretion and common sense is the key. You can't turn a blind eye and hope that situation to go away or pacify those who are an instigator, because the more passive you are, the more aggressive they're going to become. Stand your ground, say what you mean what you say, and let them know I'm going to allow you every opportunity to demonstrate peacefully, but I will not even remotely entertain any kind of anarchy or criminal activity. And when you move decisively. You put them down hard. You make sure that everybody knows I support your right to your Second Amendment, to your ability to come together, your opportunities to be out there and get your point across, but you will not become a criminal element.
So gentlemen, we're down to the last minute. I want to thank the participation and for our audience out there listening. And the final statement I'd like to say is to vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank everyone for listening, and tune in 2 weeks, and we will be presenting another show. Don't know what the topic will be, but in 2 weeks, on November 11th, which will be after the election, we will be presenting another topic, and that should be quite interesting post-election in 2 weeks, November 11th. See you then. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye, Doc. Bye, Norm.
Bye.
Bye, WCEG people. I love y'all.